My name is Associate Professor Thomas Tu, and I am the director and co-founder of Hepatitis B Community, hepbcommunity.org, and also a group leader working at the Westmead Institute for Medical Research in Sydney, Australia. Hepbcommunity.org is a brainchild of mine that got started about 2 years ago, and it has since grown to more than 1,000 people being supported on the forum. So this forum is for people living with Hep B to connect to experts, so scientists and clinicians, but more importantly, it's to connect with other people with hepatitis B and share experiences and strategies in how to negotiate their new diagnosis or old diagnosis. And it's amazing that it's an international forum. People from all over the world come there. But amazingly, the same stories come up over and over again. And so someone in Africa could help someone in the US, for example, because they've all experienced the same things: stigma, discrimination, the fear of disease progression, the fear of cancer, the fear of transmission. All of these are such big things that affect someone with hepatitis B, which I personally know because I myself have hepatitis B, and really that is the driver for me to start this forum, because I realized when I was diagnosed when I was in my mid-teens, I felt completely alone. I felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to or guide me through what having hepatitis B meant. I of course went to my doctor to find out, but after that there was no real support. And so this is what we're offering people, a highly accessible, free way to access other people in the community and share your stories in an anonymous way. You can access it and not provide your name, and so feel free to be able to talk about those issues that you personally wouldn't talk about in public, but have always felt personally in those moments when you're alone, and realize that you're actually not alone. There's a lot of people out there with it. We know that there's 300 million people with chronic Hep B, and it's crazy that when you're diagnosed you feel so alone. So I'm looking to change that.
Yeah, and with the pandemic, we've got a new awareness about mental health and isolation and all that in general, but particularly for people who are newly diagnosed or dealing with hepatitis B. That's a big concern.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes an online forum so accessible. You don't need to meet up in person. You have that lifeline there, and you can have discussions while you're on there, with actual people who've been in those situations, who share your experiences, who've walked in your shoes. So it's really great. It's a really positive community. Everyone's super. Yeah, it's growing. Everyone's super friendly, and there has been no. People just feel really relieved. That's the major emotion that I see from this forum is relief and support, which really makes me feel it is really rewarding for me. Yeah.
Glad to hear it. Here at the international meeting, you're speaking twice. The first one is has to do with liver cancer and hepatitis B. What are you going to cover?
Yeah, so we're looking at this form of the virus that is called integrated hepatitis B DNA. So it's a form of the virus that doesn't produce new virus, but we find it all the time in liver cancers, but not so much in the non-cancerous tissue. And so that sets up a question: why is it so common in the tumor tissue? And my work is looking at exactly what drives cancer and whether it's actually driven by this form of the virus, or if this form of the virus predominantly or preferentially occurs in precancerous tissue. So in either respect, we might be able to use it as a way to predict if you're more at risk of cancer, and so therefore get you under more stringent monitoring and catch a tumor earlier. And if we do that, we have way more treatment possibilities, and ones that can cure a cancer just by chopping it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it gets too far along, that isn't possible anymore. And so that leads to a lot of the high death rates associated with liver cancer that Hep B causes.
And a feeling of helplessness.
Exactly. So that's a central thing in my research, is to make sure that it is something that will eventually help patients.
Yes.
It's not something that's academic for me. Given that I see so many stories on the forum, I feel like I need to do the most that I can to help people, and that's the central thing in all of my research, and the central goal for all of my research.
Liver cancer is very hard to diagnose.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, like Hep B, liver cancer is silent. You may not feel any symptoms of liver cancer until it gets really bad. And so that's why it's so important that people continue to be monitored by their doctor every 6 months, and get their bloods taken, get their ultrasound if they need it, and FibroScan if they need it. So if we catch things early, we can do much more against it than if we leave it too late until you do feel symptoms, or you do feel really sick, in which case there are fewer options that we can offer.
The other topic that you're speaking about here at the International HBV Meeting has to do with progress toward a cure, an update on research, correct?
Correct. And at the moment, I fully understand patients may feel quite hopeless about why is it taking so long to get a cure. When we see COVID vaccines being produced in, less than a year, why is Hep B, which we have known about for decades, why do we still not have a cure?
And hepatitis C.
And hepatitis C, we do have a cure,
right.
And that has sort of reinvigorated the Hep B community, showing that it is possible to cure a viral liver disease like this. However, the underlying biology of Hep B is very different from Hep C. So this makes it much harder to design a one cure, one drug to cure the virus. And so it has meant a much greater range of scientists need to be involved. We need to have experts in the immune system. We need experts in the virus itself. We need experts in proteins on the smaller level, and biophysics, and all of these other experts, compared to Hep C, where it is mainly just targeting the virus itself and that's it. With Hep B, we expect that we'll need to activate the immune response as well as target the virus in different steps of its life cycle to be able to overcome how stable Hep B is in the liver. This is very different from Hep C, where if you interrupt its replication, it quickly burns out.
Interesting.
Yes.
So it's a dual approach, essentially. With
and even in that dual approach, there's probably multiple approaches, sub-approaches within those. So we need to target the immune response, so different arms of the immune response, so different sorts of cells, different sorts of what we call cytokines, which are molecules, signals that the immune system releases, and even the liver cells themselves also release to say, get rid of this virus. And when we're targeting the virus itself, there are so many places that we can target now. We have mostly, in the past, taken drugs from other treatments from other viruses, in particular entecavir, tenofovir. This conceptually comes from treating HIV. And it turns out that it can be used to treat hepatitis B as well, or at least suppress it. However, we're now, given the scientific advances, so that now we can grow it in the lab really well and look at all of these different features of how the virus works, we now have drugs that target different parts of the virus, so we can add them all together and suppress the virus even more, and hopefully eventually clear it. And so that's another line of my research, how to get rid of this molecule called cccDNA. So this is the basically master template for the virus that, okay, when you take entecavir or tenofovir, you stop it producing new virus, but it stays there in the liver. And so the other part of our research, and my student has presented that earlier in the meeting, is how do we actually get rid of cccDNA? And that's the major key molecule that is needed to be eliminated for there to be a cure. And so this has been one of the major aims of this entire meeting, is surrounding cccDNA and how to get rid of it, how to permanently silence it, how to chop it up. So this is also part of the race for a cure.
Interesting. I want to talk a little bit about the meeting, but I wanted to follow up just overall. There is an understandable frustration that there isn't a cure yet after decades of research and a lot of scientists working on it. But the level of activity and research and drug development going on now, would you say that it's greater than it was 2 or 3 years ago?
It's definitely accelerating, particularly after as I said before, the advent of the cure for hepatitis C.
Right.
So as I said before, there's renewed enthusiasm from both scientists and pharma,
Right.
and so there is growing funding into hepatitis B,
Right.
and the sector.
Both on the government side and industry.
Mostly industry, and in terms of some countries at least, particularly where advocacy has been particularly high. I talk about the Hepatitis B Foundation in the US. Hepatitis B funding has been growing.
Yes.
We do need more of that activity so that scientists who have the expertise, who have the passion to be able to drive cure, they get the resources that they need to be able to do that. And so everyone, I think, in the community has their place to make this happen. And I think we need to build those networks much more, and indeed continue to build those networks so that we're all heading in the same place, and we're all getting what we need. And the patient voice should be central to that.
In advocacy.
In advocacy, and determining, what are the central problems that we need to solve. Because, for example, myself as someone with chronic Hep B, I look at elimination as a noble goal, but really, that doesn't help me. Elimination of future infections really is important, right? I 100% agree with stopping people from getting new infections, but in the end, that doesn't serve me.
Right.
That doesn't serve the affected community. We need a cure,
right.
and that's just one instance of the sort of issues that we need to address as the scientific community. And we need to know more from the affected community. What do you need us to, as a scientist, what do we need to look at, and how do we best deliver a cure when it happens?
Makes perfect sense. Finally, about this meeting itself, it's nice to see it rebounding post-pandemic. There's a lot of folks here, and a lot of the key folks in hepatitis B.
Yeah, and this is essential. This is something that's truly important for science to progress in an effective manner. I feel so isolated being in Australia. Middle of nowhere sort of thing. But when I come to these meetings and have just 5-minute discussions with someone from America, from Germany, we can so quickly develop a new approach to something, a new idea, a new collaboration, so that your expert technique that you're an expert in can answer the questions that I've been puzzling over for months or years, and so that really is key for this race for a cure to really accelerate and keep heading in a direction where we will eventually serve the affected community and help them overcome this really horrendous disease.
Yeah, there's a reason to be hopeful and optimistic.
Indeed. Where we've got hundreds of scientists behind you working away, their entire lives, really dedicated to finding a cure and really truly understanding this virus to enact that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking with us.
No, thank you for inviting me. It was great. Thank you.
Pleasure.